How to Train Your Dragon is probably the best live action remake we have ever gotten, but does this one capture the heart and soul that the original has? Well, let's talk about it. But as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Erin and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. And while you're at it, if you like my videos, hit that like button as well. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments. I would love to know what you think of this movie. But without further ado, let's talk about the live action How to Train Your Dragon. So the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy is one of my favorite animated trilogies of all time. It's honestly probably top 2 right now, right behind Toy Story. And in a world filled with live action remakes, you just knew sooner or later they were going to do that to this movie, whether it needed it or not. So when this got announced, of course I was initially excited because I'm a big fan of these movies, but I also didn't want it to turn into another one of those just bland, soulless live action remakes like a lot of the others are. But now that I've seen this movie, I can happily report that's not the case with this movie. They went out and brought back Dean DeBlois to direct, and of course got John Powell back on the music, which is phenomenal again in this movie. And that not only made this a great remake, but it also made it a great movie all on its own. So let's jump right into this thing, because if you're watching this, I'm assuming that you already know what How to Train Your Dragon is about, but in the off chance that you have no clue what How to Train Your Dragon is, here's a short little synopsis. So we have Vikings and dragons, and they don't like each other, and the son of the Viking chief meets a very powerful dragon. They become friends, then they fight a big battle together against an even bigger dragon, and then at the end of the movie they all become friends, Vikings and dragons living as one. Starting things off with the good, and the first thing I have here is really just this entire cast. They were surprisingly fun to watch, and I enjoyed them a lot more than I thought I would. Each person really embodied what their character was in the animated version, and on top of all that, them as a whole just had really good chemistry with one another. Notable standouts included Julian Dennison as Fishlegs, and as far as side characters go, he was probably my favorite in the movie. He had lots of moments that really made me and my entire theater laugh out loud. And then we also had Nico Parker as Astrid, who did a great job. And if you're one of those people who are freaking out or have a problem with her casting, you can honestly go kick rocks for all I care, because she did a great job as Astrid. But of course, the star of the show was Mason Thames as Hiccup, which in my opinion was just a perfect casting. He absolutely nailed the awkward, quirky personality that Hiccup has, and this movie just simply does not work without him. Really, the only differences between this Hiccup and the one in the animated version was his voice, and honestly, I could care less about his voice at the end of the day. It really felt like they just took Hiccup out of the animated version and put him into this live action version, and I could really say that same exact thing about his relationship with Toothless in this thing as well. That, and honestly, this whole movie is just a big case of, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So they took that Toothless and Hiccup relationship from the animated version and just plopped it right over here into the live action movie, and what do you know, it worked. They hit all these same beats that they did in the animated version, and that relationship was, well, the best part of the movie, just like it was in the animated version. If this movie was going to have any chance at being good and not just feeling like another soulless, empty live action remake, that was the thing that they had to replicate perfectly, and I think they did a great job at that. Now, I can't move on without mentioning this next person, and obviously that next person is Gerard Butler returning as Stoic, and it was just so much fun seeing him reprise his role and be Stoic again, but this time in live action, because he always does a great job. And I know they've already announced a second live action remake for How to Train Your Dragon 2, and I just hope to God that they also bring back Cate Blanchett as his wife, because that dancing scene that they have when they first meet up in the second movie, I need to see that between those two in live action. I just think that would be awesome. Next up for the good, and this is something that a lot of these live action remakes have struggled to do, especially the ones from Disney, but this movie was able to do it, and that is capture the heart and soul of the original. This movie hits all of the same emotional beats, and it's able to recreate those iconic moments without them feeling forced and empty. And I think a big reason on why they were able to do this is because they brought back Dean DeBlois as the director, and I also think a lot of the creative team on this movie was the same as well. I mean, you could just tell and feel that they were treating this movie and its characters with the love and care that they deserve. And even though, yes, this is just one big cash grab at the end of the day, it was a cash grab that truly cared about the original animated version and wanted to recreate that feeling from that movie. On top of that, the one thing that really drove that feeling home was that they brought back John Powell to do the score in this thing, and oh my gosh, let me tell you, Test Drive is probably one of the greatest scores of all time, and once we finally got to that sequence where Toothless and Hiccup were flying for the first time, and then you hear that music in the background, I got chills in the theater, and I'm kind of getting chills right now talking about it because that scene was everything I wanted and more. I can pretty confidently say that even though I think the original will always be better than this movie, you still get that sense of wonder and awe while you're watching this live action one. And I'll also add on to that and say that if we never got that original animated How to Train Your Dragon movie, and this was the first time we were being introduced to this world and all of these characters, I think we would talk about this movie the exact same way we are talking about that original animated movie today. And finally, for the good, I have the CGI and just visuals in general. I think the visuals of this movie just looked really good. And then when it came to the dragons and the CGI they did on the dragons, that looked great. I mean, Toothless looked phenomenal and felt real in this thing. Now, CGI has been pretty spotty with movies over the past year / couple of years. It's been a big talking point with movies and how VFX artists aren't necessarily getting enough time to really make sure they can render out those effects and get the best of the best. So I'll go as far to say that this is probably some of the best CGI that we've gotten all year. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but considering the amount of CGI they had to do just to make these dragons feel somewhat real and feel like we could reach out and actually touch them, they did a really good job. I know it was one of Dean DeBlois' goals to make these dragons feel as real as possible, so for sequences like Test Drive, they actually built an animatronic Toothless for Mason Thames to ride so he could kind of move with Toothless through the air. He wanted to make it look and feel like Mason was riding a horse, so they built this animatronic with a bunch of individual parts that could move on their own so this thing could feel as real as possible. And it also helps that they shot on location for a lot of this, so that also added to the realism of this movie. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is something that I didn't really have a problem with, but I could understand if someone did, and that is that this is very much just a shot-for-shot remake of the original. There were very minor changes in this thing to kind of make it its own thing, but those minor changes could very easily go unnoticed if you're not a How to Train Your Dragon super fan, or if you can't recall that first movie shot for shot pretty much. And the big argument here is that, hey, if something's dang near perfect, how in the world do you make it better, or why would you remake it at all? And I guess the short answer to that is, of course, well, we're gonna make boatloads of money on this thing if we remake it. And yes, this movie is going to make a bunch of money because not only is it a huge IP that a lot of people are fans of, it's also just a great movie too. But I will say, even though this one has that same feeling of the original, it is something you've seen before, so at times, for me, at least in my opinion, I did feel like I was just rewatching that first animated movie again. Now, I do think this movie justifies its existence because at the end of the day, it is a dang good movie, but I think this is just one of those cases where I'm like, we really didn't need a live action remake to How to Train Your Dragon, but I am sure glad that we got one. And finally, getting into the bad, and honestly, I think this is just more me nitpicking the movie now just for the sake of the video and to have something bad about it. But I will say this kind of falls under the lines of live action having some limitations that animation doesn't have, and that is when it came to the dragons, especially Toothless, it felt like they were way less expressive than they were in the animated version. Now, don't get me wrong, they still looked great visually, and it's not like they weren't showing any expression at all. There was still some expression. It just wasn't on the level of the animated version, and I think that's where this movie ran into that problem of live action action being a little bit more limiting than animation. It was nothing egregious like The Lion King, it was just a little something I noticed, and I think the limitations of live action affected that because obviously in animation you can do a lot more when it comes to expressing your characters, especially when those characters aren't human. So at the end of the day, I just think this is something that they did the best they could with the limitations of live action. But to sum it all up, this is still the best live action remake we have probably ever gotten. It recaptures the heart and soul of the original and has a great cast with solid chemistry. The iconic moments are done with love and care, and the score continues to give you chills. So I will say it again, this isn't just a great remake, it's a great movie, and I think you should go check it out as fast as you can. Those are my thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.